Phil Mickelson spent 40 years building one of the most successful golf businesses in history. Now, at 56 years old, a major money shift happened behind closed doors. The person he trusted above all others officially moved a large part of his business into his own name. Golf fans know his history. They know the big stakes, the wild lifestyle, and the constant financial checks. When news breaks that a trusted family member took total control of the assets, it sounds like a complete disaster. It sounds like the worst betrayal of a golf legend. Think about the massive amount of his wealth. We are talking about hundreds of millions of dollars tied up in golf courses, houses, and business deals. Moving that kind of power needs total secrecy. It needs a level of trust that most families just do not have. When the papers finally came out, it shocked his inner circle. The documents showed a full transfer of control. The golf world is still trying to understand the legal paperwork. Fans are arguing online. Experts are confused. Everyone wants to know the exact details of this massive shift. The public assumes a bitter betrayal occurred, yet the true mastermind orchestrated everything. Every single choice he made on the golf course mirrored his approach to wealth. He took huge risks. He played the odds. But this latest move is completely different. This is about pure survival and protecting what he built. To understand this massive shift, you first need to know who actually signed the papers. It was not a random lawyer. It was not a Wall Street banker. It was his oldest son, Evan. Inside the ropes of a massive sports empire, you learn the business before you can even drive a car. Evan watched his father win millions, lose millions, and rebuild it all. He did not just see the trophies. He saw the massive debts and the endless legal battles. He grew up in the clubhouses. He saw how the tour operators treated the players. He understood the business side of the sport long before he ever picked up a driver. Most kids of famous athletes just spend the cash. Evan took a different path. He went to college, studied business, and learned how to protect wealth from the inside. He played college golf, so he knew the pressure of the sport. But he also knew that a golf career does not last forever. The money you make on the course has to survive long after you retire. Phil needed someone to handle complex course designs and real estate deals. He did not hire a fancy outside firm. He picked his oldest son. A famous player's finances are an absolute nightmare to manage. The tax authorities watch every single move. Outside creditors constantly look for any tiny weakness. Evan stepped into this mess and started organizing the chaos. He became the official point man for the private investments. People inside the industry knew he was the one making the tough calls behind the scenes. He handled the daily operations and kept the business running smoothly while his father was out playing golf. He negotiated the design fees, he managed the construction budgets, he was the quiet engine running the entire family business. Evan was ready to take the reins, however, a massive financial shadow prepared to strike. To understand the size of that disaster, you have to look at exactly what was on the table. We are not just talking about a few bank accounts or some endorsement checks. The business empire is a massive, complex machine built over 3 decades. At the center of this machine are the golf course design rights. Phil has designed dozens of courses around the world. From exclusive private clubs to massive international resorts, his name is on the blueprints. The intellectual property for those designs is worth tens of millions of dollars. Every time a new hole is built or a club pays a licensing fee, that money flows back to the family. Then there is the real estate portfolio. We are talking about massive commercial properties, luxury homes, and private land holdings spread across multiple states. These are not just houses. They are high-value assets in some of the most expensive zip codes in the country. These assets are not liquid. You cannot just hide them in a safe. They require constant management, legal upkeep, and heavy tax planning. Every single one of these properties and design rights is tied directly to the family name. When your name is on the deed, your name is on the liability. If someone wants to sue the family, they look for the properties with the famous name attached. The sheer value of these assets is staggering, but that massive wealth came with a massive target on its back. The bigger the empire grew, the more dangerous it became to keep everything in one person's name. The business empire was worth a fortune, although keeping it all under one name was becoming a fatal mistake. That fatal mistake was rooted in a very specific, very public lifestyle. Golf fans already know the stories about the high-stakes poker games and the massive sports betting habits. What most people do not realize is the sheer scale of the cash moving through those circles. He has openly admitted to wagering over $1 billion on sports over his career. That is not just a fun hobby. That is a massive financial operation. When you move that kind of money, you attract attention. You attract people who want a piece of the action, and you attract people who want to collect if things go south. The bookies know his limits. The casinos know his habits. In the world of high-stakes gambling, a massive win is always followed by someone trying to take a cut. On top of the gambling, there was the massive new league payout. When he jumped to the rival tour, he received a guaranteed contract worth hundreds of millions of dollars. That sudden influx of liquid cash changed his entire financial profile overnight. He went from being a wealthy athlete to being a massive target for every creditor, tax auditor, and legal shark in the country. Having that much cash and that much public scrutiny meant his personal name was a massive liability. Every lawsuit, every audit, and every bad bet was a direct threat to the family's entire future. The billion-dollar bets brought in massive cash. Meanwhile, they also painted a giant target on his personal name. The target on his back was not just about future bets. It was also about the ghosts of his past. Everyone remembers the college admissions scandal. He paid a huge sum to help his kids get into a top university. He admitted it was a massive mistake. He called it a careless error. But that careless error cost him millions in fines and legal fees. It also showed the world exactly how he moves his money. The government saw the bank transfers. The public saw the wire receipts. His private financial playbook was exposed for everyone to see. Once the authorities know how you move your cash, they never stop watching. The tax agencies started looking closer at his course design businesses. They started auditing his real estate holdings. Every single dollar had to be explained. Every single receipt had to be justified. This intense scrutiny made his personal name a toxic asset. If a creditor sued him, they could go after the course designs. If the tax agency froze his accounts, the real estate deals would stall. His own name was destroying his own wealth. He needed to get his name off the paperwork immediately. Removing his name from the documents was the only way to survive, which required a brilliant legal trick. The pressure reached a breaking point last year. The legal bills were piling up. The tax audits were getting deeper. The business partners were getting nervous. They wanted stability. They wanted to know that the family fortune was safe from his personal risks. They sat down in a closed-door meeting with his top lawyers. The lawyers laid out the harsh reality. If he kept the assets in his own name, he would eventually lose them. It was not a matter of if, it was a matter of when. One bad hole, one bad bet, or one aggressive lawsuit would wipe out 40 years of hard work. There was only one way out. He had to move the core assets completely out of his reach. He had to give up legal control. He had to hand the keys to someone who could never be sued for his personal debts. He needed a blood relative. He needed someone who understood the golf business inside and out. He looked across the table at his oldest son. The papers were ready. The trusts were set up. The only thing left was the final signature. He looked at his son and realized the ultimate sacrifice was about to begin. This brings us to the exact moment the papers were signed. The rumor mill said he was betrayed. The internet said his son stole the empire. The truth is completely different, and it is actually a masterpiece of financial defense. Evan did not steal the assets. Evan legally absorbed them to protect them. The lawyers created a series of blind trusts and specialized business entities. These new accounts were entirely separate from his personal finances. They were shielded from his gambling debts. They were shielded from his tax audits. They were completely untouchable by his creditors. To make these trusts legally bulletproof, they needed a manager who had no financial ties to his personal risks. Evan was the only choice. By transferring the golf course designs, the real estate, and the business equity into Evan's name, the assets were legally quarantined. If a creditor sued him tomorrow, they would find empty accounts. The real wealth was safely sitting in his son's name, working for the family, but completely out of his legal reach. He essentially bankrupted himself on paper to save his family's actual fortune. This is why the transfer looked so suspicious. It looked like a son taking everything. In reality, it was a father giving up everything to protect it. He took the ultimate hit to his public image to ensure his kids and grandkids would never lose the family money. He secured his family's future against his own chaotic past, proving he is still the smartest player in the room. The legal structure did more than hide assets. It changed how the whole business operates on a normal day. A design fee no longer goes to a personal checking account. A property rent no longer lands under a famous name. A licensing deal no longer depends on one man's public image. Every payment has a designated stop. Every contract has a different signature line. The money still supports the family, but it moves through channels that are harder to attack. This is the part most fans miss. A transfer like this does not mean the father lost everything. It means the family changed the ownership map. The value still exists. The income still flows. The brand still works. The difference is that the legal exposure sits with a separate entity. That entity has its own records, its own rules, and its own manager. The manager is not a random outsider. He is the person who knows the family's risks better than anyone. This setup solved the legal problem. It also created a new danger inside the family. That danger is responsibility. When a son puts his name on the family assets, he does not just get power, he gets pressure. His signature can start a deal. His mistake can stall one. His credit history matters. His judgment matters. His ability to stay calm under scrutiny matters. The family fortune is no longer an abstract inheritance. It is a daily operation with deadlines, taxes, contracts, and employees. One bad decision can hurt more than one bad round. Each contract now carries a different name. That small change keeps the entire machine alive. Course design deals show the pattern clearly. A golf design deal can take years. It involves landowners, architects, construction crews, local permits, and international partners. If the famous name is tied to every contract, every delay becomes personal. A lawsuit from a contractor could freeze the project. A dispute with a resort could drag the family into court. But if the contract belongs to a separate company, the fight stays inside that company. The family name stays one step away from the legal battlefield. Another layer protects the course design income. It turns public fame into private safety. Real estate works the same way. A luxury property is not just a home. It is a liability machine. It has insurance costs, maintenance crews, property taxes, tenant issues, and visitor risks. If someone gets hurt on the land, they look for the deepest pocket. If the deed sits under a famous athlete, the lawsuit starts with a headline. If the deed sits under a trust or a company, the legal target becomes much harder to reach. The asset still has value. The family can still use it. The public name is simply not the first door someone can knock on. Inside the property files, the real risk becomes clear. One lawsuit can chase a famous name for years. Tax exposure creates the same pressure. A tax audit does not need a dramatic scandal to become dangerous. It only needs a question about one deduction, one transfer, or one business expense. When the question lands on a personal account, the entire personal life becomes part of the review. When the question lands on a separate business entity, the review stays inside that entity. The family can keep operating. The bills can still get paid. The golf projects can continue. The audit does not automatically touch every asset the family owns. Once the papers were filed, the real test began. The structure had to survive real money moves. New league money made this even more important. A massive sports contract is not just a paycheck. It is a signal. It tells the world exactly how much money is available. It tells creditors that there is something worth chasing. It tells lawyers that a settlement might be worth pursuing. It tells tax agencies that the file needs a closer look. A sudden 9-figure payout can turn a private family into a public target. The structure takes that target off the famous individual and places it inside a controlled system. What looked like loss was actually control. The final plan was built for the next generation. Next generation is the real reason this move matters. A family fortune can disappear fast if it stays attached to one risky public figure. Children can inherit money without inheriting discipline. Grandchildren can inherit a name without understanding the cost. A strong trust can set rules. It can limit reckless spending. It can require education or work. It can protect the money from divorce, lawsuits, and bad business partners. The goal is not to hide wealth from the family. The goal is to keep the wealth from destroying the family. That perception gap is exactly what the plan needed. Silence became part of the defense. Silence is not accidental. If the family announced every legal move, the move would lose its power. Creditors would study it, rivals would copy it, media would twist it, fans would turn it into drama. By keeping the paperwork quiet, the family kept the advantage. The public saw a simple headline: The lawyers saw a detailed structure. The difference between those two views is where the protection lives. The story looked personal because it involved a son. The strategy was practical because it involved survival. History shows a familiar pattern. Many sports fortunes disappear after the final round. History shows a familiar pattern. A player earns a fortune during a short career. Then the career ends. The lawsuits start. The taxes catch up. The bad investments surface. The family members fight. The name that once sold tickets becomes the name on legal files. Golf is not immune to that pattern. Golf money can look stable, but it is often tied to reputation. If the reputation takes a hit, the business deals can take a hit too. Protecting the money early is not greed. It is damage control. Real victory was not avoiding risk. It moved the risk away from the legacy. None of this means betrayal. The son did not ambush a helpless father. The father did not lose control because he was weak. The family used the only tool that works when fame and money collide. They separated the public man from the private fortune. They gave the legal burden to the person who could carry it. They accepted short-term rumors to secure long-term safety. In golf terms, they did not try to win every hole. They protected the scorecard. Final lesson is simple. The smartest shot is not always the most aggressive one. Golf fans often focus on trophies, but the real game is asset control. Prize money is visible. Endorsements are visible. Major wins are visible. The hidden part is the ownership structure behind the brand. That structure decides whether the money survives the next decade. It decides whether the family keeps the course designs. It decides whether the real estate stays out of court. It decides whether the legacy becomes a business or a cautionary tale. Prize money builds the legend. Asset control protects the family. Reputation can be noisy. The balance sheet should be quiet. A famous name can sell a golf project before the first tee box is built. That same name can also invite rumors, claims, and false narratives. When the public thinks a family is falling apart, business partners get nervous. Sponsors ask questions. Banks tighten terms. By moving the assets into a quieter structure, the family reduces the noise. The story may still trend. The money does not have to trend with it. Public noise can sell a headline. Quiet paperwork protects the money. Evan's role also changes how partners see the business. A partner no longer sees only a famous golfer's brand. They see an operating company with a responsible manager. That can make deals slower, but it can also make them safer. Contracts get reviewed with less emotion. Decisions get made with fewer personal risks. The family stops reacting to every rumor and starts managing the actual assets. Evan becomes the firewall between the public story and the private business. Partners follow the signature. The signature now belongs to the plan. Risk never leaves the game. It only changes seats. The structure does not erase gambling history. It does not erase public scrutiny. It does not erase future lawsuits. It simply makes those problems harder to attach to the core wealth. The family still has to manage taxes, legal filings, and public relations. The difference is that a personal mistake no longer has a direct path to the family's most valuable assets. The moat is not perfect. It is practical. Risk never leaves the game. It only changes seats. Fans may still see the headline and assume the worst. That reaction is understandable. A son taking control sounds like a betrayal until the legal reason appears. The full picture is not about theft. It is about separation. The famous player remains the face of the brand. The son remains the legal steward. The family remains the beneficiary. The public gets the drama. The lawyers get the details. The details are what save the fortune. Headlines want a villain. The paperwork tells a different story. The golf world will probably never fully understand the complex legal paperwork. Fans will keep arguing online. Experts will keep guessing. But the people inside the industry know the truth. They know this was not a betrayal. It was a brilliant defensive move. He spent his entire career taking massive risks on the golf course. He hit shots through tiny gaps. He played out of the trees. He gambled on every single hole. But when it came to his family's future, he finally played it completely safe. He used the rules of the game to protect his legacy. At 56 years old, he is no longer just a golf legend. He is a master of financial survival. The empire is safe. The wealth is protected. The legacy is secure. The only thing he lost was his name on the deed, and that was a price he was more than willing to pay. I believe this move proves he is a financial genius, not a victim. Do you agree with this take, or do you think he is still hiding something? If you want more deep dives into the real stories behind golf's biggest names, hit that subscribe button right now.